Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is dustinkreis, and today we are going to do a game discussion, and we're finally going to talk about this game right here, Persona 3 Portable. Of course, on the PlayStation Portable, brought to us by Atlas, and this is sort of a, how do I want to put it? It's kind of scaled down, kind of a scaled down port, but in some ways a better port of Persona 3, and we'll get to that a little bit later when we talk about the graphics and the gameplay. But I've already played Persona 4, and I'm getting hyped up for Persona 5, and I want to play Persona Q on the 3DS, and I was like, I really should play Persona 3 and experience its story before going into Persona Q, so I have an idea who all these characters are and things like that. And man, wow. I understand, after playing Persona 4 Golden and playing this, I understand why people are so crazy for Persona. Again, a lot like Persona 4, it's not so much the RPG elements that drew me into this game. It's the story and the interaction with the characters, and even though that's a little bit worse than Persona 4, the social links are not as good in this one. I do feel that the storyline is a lot better in this one, and we'll get to that in a minute. But really happy I finally played this. I played as the male character. You do have a choice in this game between a male and a female character, and everyone says that the female character, much like Mass Effect, the female character is the way to play this game. So eventually, sometime down the road, I'm going to have to return to this game and play it as the female character. Also, let's see if I can do this, because it's, of course, right behind me. I do have a copy of FES on the PlayStation 2. And the reason why I bring this up is because there is a 20-hour epilogue? 30-plus hour epilogue. Oh, God, that's long. Of new content called The Answer, which picks up the story after the game ends. Sometime I do plan on putting this in and playing The Answer and seeing what storyline stuff happens from that. But the problem with this version of the game is you cannot control your teammates. It's all AI controlled, and that is a real sticking point with me, especially since The Answer defaults to hard mode, and it's just like, I don't want a character sitting there spamming a spell that heals the enemies. And whenever it's AI controlled, it seems like that shit always happens, or they just start spamming a bunch of high-level spells that do nothing against these enemies. So I don't know, it's something to kind of think about, and I'll definitely be thinking about it, because I really did enjoy the storyline to this game, and I kind of really want to see what The Answer is all about. But anyway, we're not talking about the PlayStation 2 version, we're talking about the PlayStation Portable version. And what this game does, what I mean by scaled down, it takes out a lot of the 3D interactions with the environment and really kind of turns it into a visual novel. And I talked about that with Persona 4 Golden, how I liked its more visual novel aspect, and this pushes it even further in that instead of having 3D characters interacting with each other, you just have, like you do in visual novels, just 2D sprites talking to each other, except when you're in the dungeon, and then it goes to full 3D and it plays like the PS2 version. But the storyline in this game involves a main character coming to a new school and meeting a bunch of new classmates, but something strange happens. And in this town, every night at midnight, the town has an extra quote-unquote hour called the dark hour, and only certain people can interact during this time. Most people are turned into these sort of standing red coffins and are kind of put in stasis, and certain people who have the power of personas can actually move around and do things during this hour. And the reason why I say hour is because I guess, like, in the real world, like, only an hour passes, but for the people that are awake, it can be an infinite amount of time, as long as they stay awake during that dark hour. And the game mechanics kind of make sense when we'll talk about, like, the conditioning. Characters will get tired and have to go back to the dorm and sleep and things like that. But as you move through this dark hour, and the local school turns into this huge tower that you have to explore, revelations about what's going on are revealed, character backstories are explored, and really it's just a fantastic story. It's a lot darker than Persona 4. I felt Persona 4 was kind of goofy. It had its dark moments, but it was also kind of goofy in sort of a Scooby-Doo kind of way, the way the characters interacted. And I felt like Persona 3 had a much darker storyline, and I liked that, especially when it relates to a certain character in the game that just flat out gets killed. And I'm not going to say who it is or, things like that. But it's just like, it takes you back to like Final Fantasy VII with Aerith's death. It's just kind of like what the f is going on here? And I was really happy with the twists and turns in the storyline. A big part of the Persona games, though, is the social links. And I felt like Persona 4 really perfected the social links, because if you play as the male main character, you can't do social links with the other male characters. You can only do social links with the female characters in your party. So I felt like I was missing out a lot on certain characters' developments. That was a big part of my love of P4, was getting to know everybody better. And it's still there in this game, but I don't really care so much about these sort of ancillary characters' social links. I want to know more about the main characters that are going around with me in the party. And even like Koromaru, the dog, it would have been cool to have like a social link with him, just to see like what he does during the day while we're all at school. So the social links are a bit weaker in this game, which makes sense because this was really their first attempt at this kind of game. And then with Persona 4, they kind of perfected it a little bit more. But I felt like the storyline was a lot better in this one. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do in 5, because I think in 5, especially with this slave emancipation thing, I think the storyline is going to be really good. And then if they go off of what they built on Persona 4, then the social links are going to be really good. And as far as storyline goes, I think Persona 5 is really going to do a great job. The gameplay for this game, like I said, it kind of plays like a visual novel. With you, half the game is really spent in school building up social links, building up attributes like courage, courage, charm, and academics. And as you build these up, it allows you to do more social links. So really, a vast majority of the game is spent in sort of this visual novel mode, working through the story, working through different characters, social links. And then the other half is more of a traditional JRPG dungeon crawler type thing, where you have to explore the Tartarus. And I'm not going to lie to you, I felt like Tartarus was just a little bit too big. I would be working through the different floors, and just floor fatigue would set in. And then hearing everybody talk about Persona Q, I'm kind of worried that floor fatigue is going to set in with that as well. But I don't know, something about those Etrian Odyssey games and those first-person dungeon crawlers just keep me going. Whereas, I don't know, for this, for some reason, the multiple floors of the Tartarus just got a little fatiguing after a while. I think it might be something to do with the procedural dungeons. I guess the dungeons are randomized, how the floor layout is. So, when you have a game like that randomizes the dungeons, they get to be a little bland after a while, and constantly running around in these dungeons that really don't change all that much in their appearance and what you do in them. It kind of gets a little stale after a while. And like Persona 4, I feel like that is one of the weak points of the Persona series. The storyline and the social links and that kind of stuff is fantastic. The dungeon crawling just gets a little stale after a while. The battle system, if you've played a lot of SMT games, it's all based on strengths and weaknesses with the push-turn system. If you exploit a weakness of an enemy, you get to do an extra attack with that character. And it's really about exploiting the enemy's weaknesses while defending your own weaknesses, because the enemy can do the same thing to you. If they strike somebody with a lightning attack and they're weak against it, they get an extra attack. So there's a lot of risk-reward in the battle system. The problem is when you get to an enemy that just does not have any weaknesses, those battles tend to just go on forever and ever and ever. But that's part of the SMT Shin Megami Tensei world, is just these epic, super long battles. You also have the Persona Fusion in here. As you battle, you get to do this tarot card system, and it's a lot like the one in P4, although I feel like the one in P4 was a little bit better. You can collect Persona cards as you build up shuffle times, which you do that by exploiting weaknesses and things like that. And as you get more and more personas, you can level them up to a certain extent and then fuse them with other personas to create new personas. So there really is kind of a Pokemon-esque style system in there. So for people that have not played an SMT game, the Demon Fusion system, or Persona Fusion system in this case, really has that sort of that addictive quality of wanting to get more personas, powering them up, fusing them into new personas. It's just the gameplay is a lot better, in my opinion, than Pokemon. So, but I mean, really, other than that, if you've played an SMT game, you kind of know what to expect from Persona 3. It's really just the social links and sort of the more visual novel style that really sets it apart. The graphics of this game. The graphics really, I mean, you have to understand what they're doing here. They're taking a PlayStation 2 game and porting it to the PlayStation Portable, which is really, for all intents and purposes, a PS1. So a lot of the big graphic prowess of the PS2 game is really scaled back to these 2D these 2D maps where characters are standing and you interact with them, these 2D sprites that represent the characters during the story segments. Really, I did not feel like I was losing out on anything. I've not played the original version of the game. Just looking back here on the screenshots and seeing the characters, you can say that maybe you're missing out on something because the 3D character models aren't standing there. But really, as far as the storyline segments and having to have the volume up so you can kind of follow the action with the sound effects and things like that, really, you miss nothing by the graphics being sort of scaled back for the PlayStation Portable. Of course, Tartarus and the battles are all fully 3D. So, really, it's kind of a mixed bag, but in that mixed bag, you get this game on the go, which is a godsend because I almost spent about 70 hours on the easy mode playing this game. And to have to sit down in front of a TV and play it on the PS2, this game discussion would not be done as quick if I had to do that. It would probably be sometime in March before I got the game done. So really having these super long RPGs on a portable system is a godsend because these Shin Megami Tensei games can go, I mean, I think the average hour mark for them is about 70 hours, 60 to 70 hours. So really having them portable is the way to go. So I would say definitely go with this one. As far as the audio goes, the voice acting is superb. Some people talked about how it's a little bit more stale compared to P4, but I found it to be just as excellent. All the characters are voiced extremely well. There's no sort of overly cutesy anime-esque type character where the voice, the octave of the voice is clear up in the stratosphere. They're all voiced very realistically, so I really enjoy that. The music is fantastic. If you're like me and you've played P4 before you played P3, you're going to recognize a lot of music in this game. But there is a lot of its own music in there. But you'll recognize a lot of tracks, and I don't know, man. I would between P3 and P4. I would almost put them on equal footing as far as how good the game is. I would say storyline-wise, P3 wins, but social link-wise and sort of just overall polish, P4 wins. So definitely look into getting P4 Golden on the Vita. And then if you have a Vita and you don't have a PSP or you don't want to fuck with the PSP because the disk drive and the battery life and things like that, you can download this on your Vita. It is on PSN and play it that way. And I recommend playing it that way. I thought this was absolutely fantastic on the PSP, except for just dealing with sort of the idiosyncrasies of the PSP, the battery life, the loud as fuck disk drive. I think the only thing louder than the PSP is probably the original Xbox 360 and the Dreamcast as far as disk drives go. Because people will just look at you like, why the hell is that thing making that noise? Because the PSP for some reason just sounds like it's breaking whenever it spins a disc. But yeah, just a fantastic game, and I'm really upset that it's taken me this long to get into Shin Megami Tensei, because like sitting here right now, I want to throw in Strange Journey on the DS, and I know that's a terrible idea, or I want to throw in Persona Q actually, and I know that's a terrible idea because these are super long RPGs, and I feel like right now, especially with playing Dragon Quest VII, you know, out there on the TV, I feel like I need something smaller and shorter to play. But I have tons of SMT stuff to get through, and that's kind of exciting because it's definitely becoming a series that I'm starting to enjoy a lot more and starting to respect a lot more. And that's always a good thing when you find a new series. And I'm super excited to get P5 for my PlayStation 4. God, I almost forgot. I mean, I have the thing sitting out there and I use it mostly for Netflix. You know, that's just the way new systems work nowadays. Games are few and far between. But I'm really looking forward to that. And yeah, if you guys can find this, definitely look into it. Under the new way I am doing Game of the Years. I'm doing it now on every game I play in the year instead of just the new releases. This is actually up for Game of the Year, and I haven't played, you know, it's almost getting ready to be February. I haven't really been playing very much, but you know, this is probably the first, this is the first game I finished in 2015. So yeah, as it stands right now, this is Game of the Year, but it's not going to stay there. Don't expect that, but you know, it'll only be in January. But anyway, Persona 3 Portable is in the can. Maybe sometime I'll do the answer on the PS2, although not being able to control my party members is just, I mean, that's a game breaker. That's why I went out and picked this up, because I want to be able to control my teammates. I don't know what I'm going to do next. I think I'm going to work more on Dragon Quest VII. I just downloaded Brandish on my Vita, and I feel like I should play that sooner than later. But I also kind of want to throw in Final Fantasy X on the Vita and play that and relive that, because everyone's been talking about Final Fantasy X here recently for some reason, and it's kind of made me want to go back to it and maybe get a little bit better of opinion of it. It's not that I have a bad opinion of Final Fantasy X, it's just I don't hold it in such high esteem that everyone else does. So anyway, that is it for this game discussion. Definitely check this game out. If you're a newbie to the Persona series, I would almost say pick up P4 before you pick this up, because P4 is more of a traditional, you know, 3D modeled RPG type game, whereas this is more of a visual novel, and you might like P4 more. I don't know. It's more polished, but definitely don't skip out on P3. So that is it for this video. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.